So Kenya, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you about not only your career, but this great new show that you have on Netflix.
Thank you so
I
much.
am going to introduce you to the members of AAFCA who are taking part in this call. First is Emmanuel in Chicago.
What's
up? Anthony Johnson in Houston, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Reginald Pounder also in Chicago. Let's get to the ladies. The lovely Katya in Philadelphia.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you, Katya?
Rhonda Penrice in Atlanta.
Hola.
The curvy critic, Carla Renata in Los Angeles.
Hey, Kenya.
Hey,
The lovely Mercedes in Pittsburgh.
Hi.
And I think that's everyone. Is that everyone? And then, of course, we have the voice of God, Ed Adams, who actually has my name, since he's the handler of everything that's AAFCA.
I'm logged in as Gil, but I'll be Moses, not Jesus today. How is that?
Okay, you're gonna be Moses?
Yeah, Easter's over.
Without further ado, we're gonna jump into this. So, Manuel, I believe you wanted to be the first up.
Yeah, so we could just, start this off real easy. So you have a new show coming out on Netflix, Black AF. Can you tell us a little bit about it and why it is better than Blackish, Grownish, and Mixish combined?
I won't say that that's the case at all. I love those shows. Blackish changed my life, and it's my heart. I feel like it's just different. I feel like it's more personal. I will say that it's more personal. I think I play I'm taking some hits because it's a little bit more, it could be, I won't say mean spirited, but it's a little bit more sarcastic, more sardonic. I'm playing a heightened version of myself that I'm really trying to be a little bit more self-deprecating and take some hits and be a little bit more edgier and a little bit more functionally dysfunctional as a family. I think that was one of the things going to Netflix. Like we didn't have the constraints of like, on network TV, you have to appeal to everybody. You know what I'm saying? You're looking to appeal to everybody. And I think that's great. And that was a big, move. But at the same time, I think we're moving to the place now where we can, be a little bit edgier. I wanted to take a swing. I think one of the big things with Netflix is that there's so much content, you know what I'm saying? There's such a behemoth. So when I did it, I was like, how do you do something that's a little bit noisier and make a little bit noise? And we haven't really had to, I know people are saying like, we've seen the meta version of someone playing it. We haven't had a lot of those opportunities. And so I wanted to do something that kind of gave us a look at, stepping into that lane and show how we can do it. Because I think our experiences are always unique and a little bit more different. And that was the big sort of leap for this.
So Kenya, this is Reggie Ponder out of Chicago. We talk about a little bit different. Is that talk about the title of this? The title is a little bit different. So how does that play into your vision for the show?
I mean, that was a title I could have never done on network. You know what I'm saying? At all. And I feel like, just in general, I looked at when I was thinking of titles, and we talked about Black excellence as being one of them. But I looked at the AF, the hashtag AF, and social media has become such a big part of all of our lives. When I really dug into what AF meant. You know what I'm saying? It's really just the purest personification of whatever your particular nuance is. And I think that that's what we're sort of seeing ourselves now being able to do. Like we used to have to, press our hair and wear our hair socially acceptable, you know what I'm saying? Or wear a suit and tie, you know what I'm saying? And like, I'm looking at you in a hoodie, like, you know what I'm saying? Like that was not necessarily a version of what we were ever able to do, you know what I'm saying? And I think that now we're getting to the things that we're really actually celebrating is the purest version. You know what I'm saying? I'm a huge Lizzo fan. And I think the reason Lizzo for me resonates so much is because she's the purest version of herself. And I think if she had been a different, which 5 years ago might have been more quote unquote socially acceptable, I don't think she would have worked. I think that what we buy into is that she is just really, convinced and proud of who she is. And I kind of think that that's what we're seeing, whether it's from a gender place or, sexuality place, from who you are, in your culture or whatever. We wanted to say that this is not every version of Black, but for this family, it was the most, pure and authentic version that we wanted to present to the public. And in a funny, broad way.
So, hi, Kenya, this is Carla Renata, the Curvy Critic.
There was one line that you said, and I think it might have been the first episode, that made me holler when you said that slavery was like a 400-year unpaid internship. That made me howl.
Hard
But
labor internship.
that was pure comedy. But I also wanted to know, with the cameos that you have been given, especially the one with Steve Levitan, how did you get him to come to the Four Seasons for y'all to shoot that?
You know, that story actually happened in real life. Like one of the stupid purchases, you know, I did that was sort of like, I got a little bit of money and I was like, I got a Ferrari, right? And it was like, you know, I was the kid who, you know, you want the angular cars when you get your Hot Wheels as a kid. And I always was like, I wanted that car. So I got it. I immediately felt kind of stupid for having it. I never really drove it. But I got my agency gave me floor tickets to the game. It was like a daddy-daughter night. I asked my daughter if she wanted to go to the game. We went to the game. And I'm sitting at the game, and you know, it's a good game. And all of a sudden, I look up, and fucking Jeffrey Katzenberg is standing over me. And he's like, "Hey, Kenya." I'm like, "Hey, what's up, Jeffrey Katzenberg?" And he's like, "I'm a big fan of your work." I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks, Jeffrey Katzenberg." And he's like, "You know, would you like to go out to, you know, have a meal one day?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, dude. You know, sure. I'll eat with you, Jeffrey Katzenberg." I'm like, "This is never gonna happen." He gives me his number. It's an overtime game. Me and my daughter have a great time. It's a little bit late. We come home. 11:30, Jeffrey Katzenberg texts me and was like, "Do you want to go to breakfast?" And I'm like, "Okay, Jeffrey Katzenberg." I'm saying it because that's how foreign this name is to me. You know what I'm saying? No idea. I'm waiting for Punk every time he talks to me to come up because I know who he is in the big, you know, scene of what Hollywood is. So the next morning, I'm rushing because I have to go from the Valley to LA. And I'm rushing out the house, and I realized where we parked the car, I couldn't take another car because it was like we were in so late. And I was like, "Fuck, I'm gonna have to take this car." I was like, "I'll park it up the street." So I drive, and of course, there's no parking up the street. And I'm like, I'm just gonna get out the car really quickly and go in. Who's in front of me getting out of a dirty ass Prius? It's Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
And he turns around and he sees me. He's like, "Hey, nice car. Good for you, buddy. Good for you." And he comes up on the passenger side. He's opening up. He's like, "What year is this?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's just one of them. I mean, you know, it's fine. It's whatever." I'm trying to get. Every time he was talking, all I was hearing in my head is, "Hey, black guy spending all his money on his car. I could buy for him."
Boom.
And I was like, I wanted to just burn the car up in the middle of that.
It was very funny.
I was so disturbed that in the meeting, I just keep Googling while he's talking, Jeffrey Katzenberg net worth. Does Jeffrey Katzenberg have a jet? Like, I'm not even listening to him. And I'm bothered because why do I care that he sees me in this car? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, you know, I can theoretically afford it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I felt like, you know, here he is in a Prius, he's a billionaire and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, this is the duality of the world that we live in, you know, is that I'm constantly having a sort of like, I want those things that we, you know, saw the ball players and the D-boys and the people, the singers and rappers that but at the same time, once I get them, I feel like I'm kind of being judged, you know what I'm saying, for having them. So that was, you know, and Steve Levitan's unbelievably more successful in it, you know, so he was the version of that, and he's a you know, played the role in a great way. So that was kind of where we went. Where I wanted to kind of start the series with the duality of white gays that we all, you know, live with. You know what I'm saying? We're happy that we get to be, quote unquote, that one. You know what I'm saying? Who's who's a critic or an actor or a ball player or a doctor. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, we're always like battling the fact that we're kind of that one. You know what I'm saying? And we have the weight of the world on us because, you know, we have so much, you know, people look at what we do and feel like there's so much more weight because there's so fewer of us. You know what I'm saying? And that was the duality that we wanted to sort of took the conceit of the show and kind of rode that for the whole thing.
It was perfectly presented. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, Kenya. Kenya Woods, Couple Social out of Philadelphia. Oddly enough, you sat next to me at Farewell More at Sundance, and you offered me gum, so I appreciate that.
Oh, I remember that.
Talk a little bit about why you've made it a point, and I like that about you, that the shows you've developed show a side of Black life we don't see. Middle class, successful, because I hate when people say, well, that's not real. And I'm like, yes, not all of us grew up in the hood. Nothing wrong with that. Not all of us grew up poor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Middle class Black America exists. And I also love how in the show, when we still do this, no matter how successful we are, we immediately when we go to predominant white event, we go, how many other Black people are here?
Count
and
the
then
Black
really, just in case something goes down, what's the exit strategy? Talk about how we can be super successful, like you said, and we're still like, what is my conversation going to be like?
Yeah.
How do I navigate this room?
I still, when I'm with my boys, every time I see the police, I'm like, police, 3 o'clock. I don't know why, but I still make it a point to be like, everyone needs to know where the police are at. And it's ingrained in me. You know what I'm saying? And everyone's like, and I never see that with my white friends, you know what I'm saying? But we call out the police, and I don't have anything against the police. Shit, if something happens in my house, I call them quicker than everybody, you know what I'm saying? But it's still in my mind, like those sort of implanted things. It's interesting. I've read this, I don't know if any of you guys read that post-traumatic slave disorder book. It's interesting. We were in slavery a little bit over 400 years, and they say it takes 2 generations before things begin to be normalized, right? We were in generations about 11 or 12 years. So we were almost in slavery 40 generations, 38 generations, something like that, which is why I think Jim Crow was actually worse than slavery, because we came out of a situation where for 40 generations, we didn't know to not bow our head when white people walk by. We didn't know to, all these types of things. And the notion that we've come as far as we have in the time we've been free, far less than we were enslaved, the notion that we've come as far as we have in the time we have, we can't forget that there are a lot of ingrained things that have been, put within our DNA that are just part of who we are. And I feel like we're constantly living that duality. You know what I'm saying? We're just at the place where we can wear our hair naturally to our places of business, where we don't have to sort of try to fit into other people's, pocket of what what we're at. So I think the notion of going in, I used to, when I would sell pilots, I used to like look at who I was going to and try to dress like what I thought they thought the Black guy was going to be. Like I looked at what a picture of them was. And I had, I was selling pilots and I was working, but I wasn't really happy because I wasn't really being myself. And I think the moment that it sort of started to change it for me, I was like, you know what, fuck it. They're not going to give me a chance or accept me anyway. So I might as well just give them who I am from the beginning. And the moment that I did that, I think Obama, we saw a big thing with that. He had a pimp in his walk and he was smoking Newports and had a pretty Black wife and pretty kids. And she was curvy and he was like, fuck it, this is who I am. And interestingly enough, that was more acceptable and that was more pliable. And we bought into that. And I think we're seeing more and more that we kind of have to sort of be in our own lane and follow our own drum. And we show up for each other. And I think we show up for each other when we're more authentic than when we're trying to sort of be what the mainstream says we are, should be.
I just wanted to dovetail on that because one of the things that you do in both Blackish and Black AF is that you show a parent who didn't grow up with all the advantages, and you're negotiating that space. And I know that's a big deal from a lot of people I've interviewed in the past, that you can't even relate to how your kids are living.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of all taught to give our kids more than we have, right? You know what I'm saying? That's what you want to do. But in doing that, like, what do you lose? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think one of the big things with me was like, I had hustle. You know what I'm saying? I used to go to gas stations and ask people if I could pump gas. I used to get cans. I used to mow neighbors' yards. I used to help, do this and do that. And, I want my kids to have all the other advantages that the kids that don't look like them have. But I also want them to have that X factor, that there's a hustle that we have to have. You know what I'm saying? So, that's sort of the balancing act, is like, you want to give them the things, but you also know that the things that all of us did is that there was that extra gear that we were like, I want to hustle to get there. So I think that's the balancing act between them. And it's interesting, like, their mom's a doctor. I got to be a writer, you know what I'm saying? A lot of my brothers and sisters went to college and we went, all came from the hood. The notion that like we were that first generation, I'm my mid 40s, going to college was not an option for me. And my mom always says that was, what they fought for in civil rights, is that we had to go. You know what I'm saying? We were the first generation that actually, it wasn't like maybe, it was like you had to go, and whatever you were going to do with that, or if you stayed or whatever the case may be. So I kind of think now you're at this generation where I really treasure education with my kids, you know what I'm saying? And I tell them they have to, even though they're like, I want to do this, I'm like, well, you're going to learn to do it while you're in college, and I feel like education is really the key for us. You know what I'm saying? I think knowledge is power, and whether it's a trade tech or a design school or something, you're going to get some continued education, because I think that the more we can empower ourselves with that, beyond what you might have and whatever, things we might have given them, that part of it is not negotiable for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, my kids aren't taking gap years, you know what I'm saying? They're not doing that. Like they, at that point they become adults and they can work, you know what I'm saying, and work themselves back in. But I think that's something really important for me.
Hi, Kenya. Anthony here, the movie brother. Congratulations on your new show.
Thank you, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about your this is your acting debut, right? So from the idea of you even getting in front of the camera, right, to how did you prepare and, go through that whole process?
I did not go into it thinking I was going to do this. You know what I'm saying? I had an actor that I loved, I consider a friend, really talented guy who was going to play the role, and I was really blessed to have him because he's always in demand. And we started thinking, and Rashida, who's my partner, said, like we were talking about standing out on Netflix, you know what I'm saying, and how do we sort of become a little bit more noisy. And also some of the things that I wanted to say were a little bit more provocative and edgy, and did I want to put an actor in that kind of crosshair? And we started talking, and I actually am a fan of Larry David, and I got a chance to talk to him, and he gave me some really good advice and some motivations, and I started feeling like, in the same way Seinfeld was his and he did Curb, like, why, I wanted to take a chance and show us doing that, you know what I'm saying, and stand out in a way that we could sort of relate and sort of, get behind the camera and show that there is a life behind the camera, because so many kids I go talk to, like, they don't really, I didn't know, to be completely honest, when I was growing up, I didn't know that people wrote dialogue. I thought that that's what actors did. I thought that actors, that's why, that's why they were actors, you know what I'm saying, that they got a scene and they acted through it or whatever. And that might be naive, but when you're growing up in certain situations, you're not taught those things. You don't have other people's parents who are writers and directors and things like that. So the notion of being able to see, it's sort of the reason, like the whole chains and I tell my daughters always tell me pull up my pants and shit like that. In some aspects, it's who I am, but in some aspects there are sometimes it's performative, you know what I'm saying, if I'm going to be completely honest, because I want the kid who's in junior high to see a version of what he might see in himself and say that can be me, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like, if the notion of sometimes suit and tie and sometimes being too buttoned up might put a distance between me and that kid who might actually be the next great screenwriter or the next great, poet or whatever the case may be. I want to see, like, rappers are just poets, you know what I'm saying? They're just poets, who are telling their stories. And they've put a hard edge to it, but they're, being a poet is probably the softest thing you can be in the world, you know what I'm saying? And we've taken it and remixed it, but it's important that we let kids see a version of themselves in a world that they did not see that was possible for them. And so, for me, that was a real big part of, trying to, once again, I'm terrified. I'm terrified of being an actor. That's not something I ever wanted to do. I would never do it again, but for this show. But I wanted to show kids that there's actually a Black man behind those words. So many people think I'm a woman because of my name anyway, you know what I'm saying? But I want to show kids there's a Black man behind those words, and this is his family, and he has kids, and, you know what I'm saying, he wants the same, sometimes, materialistic things. At the same time, he battles with them. I just wanted to show people that this was a real life thing, and I wanted to also, I do care that white people watch our stuff, you know what I'm saying? I do it for us. But I think it's important that we have a little bit of a opening of the range, because it lets us be seen, you know what I'm saying? And the more the people can see us, the more they sort of understand that we're a part of what Americana is. You know what I'm saying? It's been brought on our back. And, the sweatsuit is the new suit, you know what I'm saying, for a lot of us, you know what I'm saying? And so that was the kind of the notion behind it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mercedes Williams. I'm also known as the movie scene queen, straight out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I watched all 8 episodes, and what really stood out to me the most was the episode about the movies and the Black cookout. So it just seemed like there was a lot of different underlining tones and topics, not necessarily to say that they were kind of like subliminal, but it seemed like you had a Colin Kaepernick jersey on. There was a Colin Kaepernick stand behind a Black writer, stuff like that. So when you're talking about making all 8 of those episodes and you know that there's other themes, and I didn't want to think that I was overthinking it, what were some of the more subliminal messages you had, I would say, throughout those episodes that you wanted the audience to get of? You had the overlining theme or topic of the episodes, but you have some other smaller ideas that came out of every episode too.
Yeah, this was, I'm not gonna lie, this was for us. You know what I'm saying? Like I really, when I did Blackish, I definitely, you know, I wasn't pandering, you know what I'm saying? But I knew I was on ABC. I knew I wanted to do something that opened us up so that everyone could sort of, you know, that audience could be wide enough so that we could, you know, one of the big things with Blackish is when we first debuted, we tied or beat Modern Family. And that's why that show is still on, because we show up for each other. But we can only show up for each other so much, as in Ryan showed with Black Panther. And then we have to cross over in order to, because I do believe the commercial success is really important for us. You know what I'm saying? I think it's what we need to sort of, you know, Spike Lee was a big influence for me because he was a guy who was in being a very, very, very Black voice, but he did it at such a high level that it spoke to everybody. So I feel like, you know, when the whole thing is full of small niche jokes for us, things that I'm like, we will get, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, from Strawberry Soda with Juneteenth to, you know what I'm saying? I had, you know, so many jokes that I took out about, you know, heating up the sugar water for Kool-Aid, which my grandmother used to do. And like, you know what I'm saying? The idea of how you really get the sugar, just little things that I was really for us. And I saw that like moments like that we did in Blackish Marseille, and I didn't think anything of it because we had an all Black hair and makeup department. And, you know, I had seen it with all my daughters and my moms and sisters and aunts. We wrapped Marseille's hair to go to bed. And I was shocked that how many people wrote in that they had not seen. They were like, oh, that's what you, and other, you know, white people were like, I hadn't seen it before. And little Black girls are writing in, their moms were like, my daughter cried because she had never seen herself depicted like that. And I'm like, we've never wrapped someone's hair to go to bed. You know what I'm saying? It was such a small thing. So little things like that, I was like, I'm not going to run from, and I really wanted to, you know, their Easter eggs, like even the title, every title is because of slavery. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some version of that. And I really do believe that like so many of our actions and habits and behaviors that people sometimes want to make mockeries of or laugh at, or memes even within our own culture, try to, you know, just, you know, say like, this is the way Black people do it. I think that those things are behaviors that we are in some way should be a part of the lexicon of what we are. And at the same time, people should understand those are things that are part of, you know, our experience in this country. You know what I'm saying? And if you look at it like that, we should be celebrated. That's why Juneteenth is such a big thing. Like, how can we have an Independence Day when everybody wasn't independent? You know what I'm saying? And as much as I love hot dogs and fireworks, like that is a real day that we should in this country really, really, really celebrate. So, you know, little things like that, I really feel like throughout the series, I dropped in a way that I could never have dropped before. And I really, you know, I hope that we get them. You know what I'm saying? I think Black people know that Marvin Gaye, when he sung in the beginning of thing, like that was the one. Everybody else needs to fucking just stop and just give it now. But I feel like we know that. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, that was those little things and those little moments that we talked about in our homes, you know, are expressed, and maybe people understand and start looking at us and seeing us in a wider range.
And this is Reggie Ponder again. When you talk about these things from a cultural perspective, does it come into play at all when you're tackling these iconic films like Coming to America 2, which is coming up, and Uptown Saturday Night? Do these things come into play, the same kind of thinking, or do you just kind of push that to the side when you tackle these big iconic films?
Oh, absolutely. You know what I'm saying? When I was doing Coming to America, I don't know if you guys had a chance to read the script, like the moment that I was most excited for was the reintroduction of the barbershop. You know what I'm saying? Because that barbershop scene was, they were talking about all the shit we're talking, you know, that people were talking, you know what I'm saying, talk about whatever. And, you know, it was, you know, those moments, those barbershop moments, and Eddie and Arsenio and those guys going in they all were just Easter eggs that were all our uncles and this and that, but they were also about real things. And that was a real topical moment. And so that was one of the moments I was most excited about writing in that, you know what I'm saying? I got, you know, for me, Shaft, I really, really, really enjoyed Shaft. You know what I'm saying? I think that it got, you know, a lot of, to be honest with you, a lot of white critics, you know, felt like it was toxic masculinity. And I was like, you know, it's fucking Shaft. You know what I'm saying? And for us, it was that, I should have called it Shaft Toxic Masculinity, because that really was, that's what the movie actually, you know, really was. And that's what we were, it was a comical look at that character who didn't look both ways when he crossed the street, because that's who he was. And I think the joke was missed. You know what I'm saying? I think the joke was missed. I still stand behind that movie in a really, really big way. And I think sometime, you know, that was a lesson for me, is I'm not going to lean away. You know what I'm saying? In the studio, you know, New Line, who I, you know, do a lot of business with, they said, you know, we misrepresented that we should have leaned into that. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of think like that was an iconic, you know, brand for us. And, you know, I'm not leaning away from that anymore. I feel like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least I'm going to give the purest version of what I think it should be.
You guys, last two questions.
I got one. I got one real quick. So, Mr. Barris, this is E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews again.
What up, E-Man?
You've been in the industry for a while. You know, you're a seasoned vet. You've been in here since what, 97, I want to say, with the Keenan Ivory Wayans show and all that.
Yeah, over 20 years, yeah.
And you've had the unmitigated gall to just be unapologetically Black in everything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about your perspective on Hollywood and just the industry, and just, you know, is it accurate, and just how you navigate through that? Because it's kind of difficult just being Black in America, period, but being in the industry that doesn't always cater to us. Can you just talk about navigating that through the many projects that you're doing?
Yeah, it's interesting. The Keenan Ivory Wayans show was a great, you know, model, and, you know, Keenan's a genius. And I, you know, just going back to that, I remember there was a sketch that never got on that my partner Faisal and I were talking about. One of this great writer, Vernon Chapman, wrote, but it was called Too Many Niggas on Stage, right? And it was a rapper, kind of like a Wu-Tang-esque rapper, and he came out and he was like, yo, I got you guys, and my man, and people just kept coming out on stage, and that's what Wu-Tang was. And all of a sudden the stage collapsed, right? And you just saw this big massive, you know, collapse, and you just heard somebody go, man, there's too many niggas on stage. And it was like a really, you know, it was, you know, using the N-wordness, but it was like a funny, if they had put that on SNL or put that on, and I was so upset that those things couldn't be, you know, couldn't come out. But I love the idea of us being the purest version of what we were. And I actually just did a book deal, and I had it before. And I went back and I signed with One Word, who's Ta-Nehisi Coates' producer. And it's basically called, This Is Basic Shit. Shit we know that we can't, we're shocked that you don't. You know, and the idea of the whole book is about, we're constantly teaching. I'm teaching, you know, like we're constantly like with our friends, our white friends, and not even doing it. We're constantly like giving them, you know, like, you know, that's not okay what you're saying, right? You know, and it's like that is become our crutch, you know, our cross to bear, but also our job. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like we can't run from it. You know, as much as I hassle it as it is, we have to make sure that we're, you know, and there is no absolute, there's no sort of, you know, we're not monolithic as a people. There's 100 different ways of being Black, but we have a voice, and we need to make sure that voice is being, you know, as loud as possible. You know what I'm saying? To show that there's as many different versions of us. And I feel like, you know, you know, there was some criticism about, you know, colorism and things like that for me, you know what I'm saying, in terms of, you know, and, you know, how I cast. And I, you know, really rebelled against it. I was having some media training things, and I was like, I don't want to not talk about that. You know what I'm saying? I was like, this show in particular for me, and people need to realize, like, you know, I can show you my family, and it is all, you know, our real family, it is all shades of colors as most of our families are. You know, this was a show that was really personal, that was based on my family, and I didn't want to run from the fact that this is what me and Rashida Jones would make, you know what I'm saying? And at the same time, this is what my father looks like, this is what my grandmother looks like, my great-grandmother was a slave, you know what I'm saying? I just came out of sharecropping, was a slave. I feel like I, you know, have throughout my career tried to present as many versions and different versions of representation as possible. And I understand that there have been a lot of people's real experiences where they have been affected by colorism. But for me, when I see those things talked about, I don't run from them or get mad at people. You know, I defend my children because they definitely have a Black experience, and I want to make sure that everyone sees that. But you know, one of the reasons the civil rights movement worked is like, you look at Angela Davis, they were people who before would have not, they were mixed people. Like when it came time for us to come together, we wanted all of us to come together. We wanted, you know what I'm saying, the Black experience, we needed as many numbers as possible. And I feel like my job is to keep giving others opportunities, keep making opportunities myself so that I can continue to make as many different versions and, you know, different things that represent all the whole spectrum of us. And I want us to be really careful when we're sort of, you know, to not be apologetic about our experiences, you know what I'm saying? And to make sure that we try as much as we can to open up doors for different people who have different forms of stories. Like we were at the, you know, the Marcus Scribner's movie, and it was a beautiful movie. And it was a completely different experience of what, you know, a first generation African coming to America's, you know, story was. And I feel like it's not just, that's why that episode 5 that we did, this series was so important for me, because, you know, I'm a fan of Tyler, but my mom and aunt, I remember them watching those Tyler Perry plays on VHS when I come in the kitchen. I'm like, what are you watching? And they loved it. And they show up to those movies, and they're not showing up to those movies liking them because they're Black movies. They actually enjoy those movies. And why does their opinion count less than someone else's? You know what I'm saying? I feel like Adam Sandler, you know, has a particular lane. He's really, really successful in that lane. I wouldn't necessarily call that elevated art, you know what I'm saying? But if he does something and someone doesn't feel like it's elevated art, they don't feel like he's the downfall of white culture, you know what I'm saying? Because there's a brand of people who like that movie. Why, if Tyler shows up and he's a successful businessman and there are people who actually really enjoy his work, why is, if someone feels like it wasn't the most elevated form of art, why is that the downfall? Why is he the downfall of Black culture? And I feel like he has been successful because he doesn't care about that. He knows his audience, he knows his niche, and whether you like it or not, respect that he's a businessman who's out there doing something, and he's opening up a lot of doors, and that we need as many different lanes as we can, you know what I'm saying, to get more of us, you know, in the place to tell our stories. I was looking at this fucking movie on Netflix, which is really good, Unorthodox, but it was about Hasidic Jews. And I was like, we get 4 stories to tell. White people get as many stories as humanly possible. They used to get to keep talking about shit, as many things. I'm like, we need to be able to talk about more than the 4 stories that let us tell. And the only way we can do that is have enough people out there who we're supporting and who tell their stories. And it doesn't, if we don't get them, doesn't mean that it's not, you know, a good story. It means that that's something someone else may get. We need to have more opportunities.
That was a great point. AAFCA, final question.
Kenya, my question to you, this is Katya Woods again in Philadelphia, is that one of the things that drew you to Netflix, that you saw that they were giving opportunities to different type of Black creatives? Like, that's one thing you can say, not just Blacks, but Latinos, where you can look and you can see, okay, these are different types of voices, these are different types of experiences, and the freedom to be able to, is that one of the reasons where you're like, you know what, this seems like a good fit for me versus what I had?
Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? And it was, I have nothing but love for ABC because they changed my life, my family's life, and, you know, got a show on that I think in a lot of ways, for a lot of us, you know what I'm saying, made us more accepted part of the sort of, you know, American demographic. But I did feel like it was time for me, I wanted to tell different stories. You know, Charles King, who's a friend, you know, has a really successful show on Netflix about a Latino family, you know, running a store, you know what I'm saying? And it's really successful. And I think those stories, and we need to have their back, you know what I'm saying, as well. Those stories need to be told, and we need to understand that they're not just, you know, a monolithic people as well. And I feel like, you know, we are becoming, you know, the whole reason that I had that scene where I'm talking to everyone and we're kind of taking little small shots at each other's work is we see each other, you know what I'm saying? We have those conversations, and it was important to say, you know, like Michael Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer could be in a room, and, you know, Jerry Bruckheimer could, you know, jokingly look at Michael Bay and say, I'm sorry I didn't blow something up, Michael. And no one would think any less of either of them. It doesn't hurt their career because they're bosses enough that they can take critical shots at each other, and it actually makes them feel more a part of it. And I feel like, you know, we're getting to the place a lot of us are working, you know what I'm saying? And we're making real strides in this, and we can be critical. I still believe that, you know, I support everything Black, and in public, I'm going to scream the praises. But behind, you know, but when we're having those conversations, we are critical of each other. We can talk to one another. I talked to Lena about, I love Queen and Slim, but I talked to Lena about some of the issues I had with it. She talked to me about things that I have with it. She talks about things I like. And I think that those things push our art and our, you know, us further, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like you know, it's really hard. I've had a really interesting relationship with critics. You guys in particular have been unbelievably supportive. But, you know, I got a review yesterday on Variety, and this reporter just like fucking like went at me, dude. And I was like, I got time today. I was like, I'm gonna review the reviewer. And I was like, you know, literally I went into a dive, and I was like, I can't do this right now. But it wasn't that I mind a bad review, because that is what reviews are about. And you know, if you're gonna believe any of them, you gotta listen to all of them. But it was so personal, and it was so missed. And it was so, the entitlement to that was so, you know, it was angry, you know what I'm saying? And I felt like it was this guy who, you know, I went on this thing, and I'm so petty. I was like looking at this thing. I'm like, he like has a kitchenette in his house, you know what I'm saying? And all this type of shit. And I'm like, of course this dude is like, fuck this Black guy. You know what I'm saying? He's not gonna do it. But I literally was like, you know, Courtney Kemp did an amazing thing where she went, and Greg Raxon, who's a friend, you know, but she, you know, followed back and had some things. I think that we can be, you know, we have the opportunities. We can open this conversation up more. And just like everything else that you let us in, once we get in, we're gonna kick the door down and, like, you know, look at the NBA, look at everything else you gave us a part to be a part of. I really feel like, you know, there is a power base amongst us that if we stick together, you know what I'm saying? It's that thing your grandmother used to tell you, you know, 5 is this, but when it's stronger when it's a fist. I think if we stick together and we're honest with each other, it doesn't mean just like, you know, supporting things that aren't necessarily positive because they're Black, but being honest and helping us grow. I think that we're a super powerful group.
You know, we trying to support, we definitely want to have your back. Is there anything you can tell us about Coming to America 2 to get us looking forward to it?
Yes, everybody came back, you know what I'm saying? Arsenio and Eddie are at, it's crazy because I've been an Eddie Murphy fan my whole life, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think, you know, Will Smith is, you know, a friend, but you know, and Will Smith is one of the biggest stars in the world. Will outworks everybody. He's charming, he's charismatic, he's talented, you know what I'm saying? But Will tell you, there's been a lot of blessings, a lot of luck, and a lot of hard work that he put in. Eddie could have been born in a box in Calcutta and he was gonna be famous. You know what I'm saying? Like, he is unbelievably and undoubtedly one of the most talented people, along with Jamie Foxx, one of the most talented people working. You know, so when I went to the house, you go to the house, you meet Eddie, and I'm sitting there, and it's just like, he's kind of reserved, he's kind of quiet, but like everything he says when he starts talking, it's like just so unbelievably genius level funny. You know what I'm saying? And he doesn't even call himself an impersonator, but he'll do you in 5 minutes. He'll do your thing back. And so seeing those two dudes together and seeing how Black doesn't crack, because you could go back and do reshoots on them from the first one. They both look, you know what I'm saying, just creamy skin, and they look, you know, like keep it together. But it felt like I was part of a really special group. You know, we were on Tyler Perry's lot, shooting Coming to America. Bad Boys 2 was shooting in the thing next to us. And there's that famous sort of thing where they walk over and it's Tracy and Wesley and Martin and Will and Eddie, you know, and it's just like, you know, like, we have come a long way, you know what I'm saying? And to see what we've done, it felt like, oh my God, like, I don't deserve to be here, but I am gonna smell the roses and be thankful and, like, you know, thank my ancestors, you know what I'm saying? Because this is something that they did not, you know, anticipate, but this is the strength that they gave us to get here. You know, I feel like it is, you know, one of the things about that movie that I felt that made me really think is when we were looking for who's gonna play Eddie's son, we got a great guy, Jermaine Fowler, but it was really hard. And I think that it made me think that there's a responsibility on us as creatives. We have to bring up that next generation. You know what I'm saying? Like, who is the next generation? Eddie and those guys were stars when they were 20 years old. Like, who's the 20 to 25-year-old star that you're gonna put on a poster that gets people to come to the movies and gets people to watch? We have to bring up, you know, that next generation, and we have to bind together and really support them and get them, you know, get them in front of the thing so that they can actually lead the generation after them. So that's one of the sort of my missions is, you know, I try to do it with Grownish. You know, I love the kids we cast in this show, but I want to bring up what's that next generation of actors and writers and directors.
Thank you so much, Kenya, for the opportunity. We look forward to much more creativity and content from you, and look forward to celebrating you real soon.
All right, guys.
Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.